12 people have been executed by the state of Nevada since 1976. Jesse Walter Bishop, October 22, 1979. Bishop was imprisoned for 5 years in a California state jail in 1962 for robbery. Despite being granted parole in 1967, he carried on with his criminal life, consuming substances and committing robberies. He was incarcerated once more in 1970. 2 years later, in 1972, he managed to break out of prison, but he was apprehended soon after and sent back. He was granted parole to Los Angeles in 1976, but documents from the prison showed that he persisted in his criminal activity and substances consumption. He became a wanted fugitive after committing an armed robbery in 1977. Bishop entered the El Morocco Casino on the Las Vegas Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada on December 20, 1977. He demanded all of the money from the female cashier while brandishing a handgun. 2 individuals tried to stop the robbery after witnessing it. David Ballard, another casino customer, and employee Larry Thompson attempted to stop him. As Ballard attempted to run, Bishop shot him in the back and Thompson in the stomach, and then he left the casino after stealing $238. Ballard, a 22-year-old newlywed Volkswagen mechanic from Baltimore, Maryland, passed away in the hospital on December 30th due to his injuries, but Thompson survived the shooting. Ballard had barely been married for 3 hours when he was shot. Bishop left the casino in a green car after the shooting, and the next day the car was discovered abandoned at the Frontier Hotel. A day after the murder, he stole a man's car and robbed him at the Union Plaza Hotel in downtown Las Vegas. He tried to escape from authorities by leaving the stolen car behind and then stealing a pickup truck. He ordered the owner of another car to drive him around while he seized hostages and entered it at gunpoint. Then he captured another hostage by taking over a U.S. mail truck. He then proceeded to steal a UPS truck. Eventually, he got off the UPS truck and started walking. After an extended manhunt, Bishop was apprehended on December 22nd, 2 days after the casino heist. He was found sleeping under a trailer or mobile home in Boulder City, Nevada. He was found in possession of the gun used in the murder. Bishop calmly turned himself in, was arrested, and was then returned to Las Vegas to face charges, even though he had stated that he would shoot it out with the police. Prison officers escorted Bishop into the Nevada gas chamber in the early hours of October 22. After strapping him onto one of the death chairs, the gas inhalation execution took place. The process was observed by 14 individuals. Prison officials declared Bishop dead at 12:21 a.m. Filet mignon, asparagus, baked potato with sour cream, tossed salad with Thousand Island dressing, and dessert were his last meal. In Nevada, Bishop was the first execution since 1961. He was the last prisoner to be put to death by gas chamber in the state. Since then, lethal injections have been used to carry out executions in the same room. Carroll Edward Cole, December 6, 1985. Serial killer Carroll Edward Cole was put to death in Nevada for strangling 2 women. In addition to being found guilty of killing 3 more women in Texas, he is thought to have killed up to 30 individuals between 1947 and 1980. He committed his first murder when he was just 8 years old. He drowned Dwayne, a youngster of the same age, one of his classmates, in a Richmond, California lake as payback. At first, investigators considered the death to be an accident, but years later he confessed it was intentional. Cole committed a number of small-time offenses during his adolescence and was regularly arrested for intoxication and small-time stealing. He enlisted in the U.S. Army after high school, but in 1958 he was discharged for bad conduct after stealing guns. Cole assaulted 2 couples who were parked in a lover's lane in 1960. He soon reported that he was having violent dreams about strangling women to the police in Richmond, California, where he was residing. Over the following 3 years, Cole was admitted to several mental facilities. Despite the fact that medical authorities had diagnosed Cole with antisocial personality disorder, his release was authorized in April 1963. After being freed, Cole went to live with his brother Richard in Dallas, Texas. He married an alcoholic stripper named Billy Whitworth there, but his views on women remained unchanged. Cole convinced himself that Whitworth was having relations with men at a motel, so he set it on fire, ending the marriage after 2 years. He was consequently taken into custody for arson. Cole tried to strangle an 11-year-old girl in Missouri after being released from prison. He was again taken into custody and given a 5-year prison term. Cole wound up in Nevada after serving his sentence, where he tried to strangle 2 more women. He checked himself into a mental health facility once more. He was issued a ticket back to San Diego after physicians there acknowledged his deadly fantasies but decided not to keep him. Essie Louise Buck, whom Cole had picked up in a San Diego tavern on May 7, 1971, was his first adult victim. Before dumping the body, he drove around with it in the trunk of his car after strangling her to death. He murdered an unnamed woman and buried her in a remote place about 2 weeks later. He subsequently asserted that they reminded him of his adulterous mother because they had shown themselves to be unfaithful to their husbands. Cole married Diana Faye Younglove Paschal, a bartender and drinker, in July 1973. Cole often left on his own for days at a time, and they often argued and fought. While he was away, he would kill people, including one woman whom he apparently partially cannibalized. Cole killed Paschal by strangulation in September 1979. 8 days after a suspicious neighbor alerted the police, they discovered her body hidden in a closet and wrapped in a blanket, but they concluded that her death was due to excessive drinking, and after questioning, Cole was released without being charged. After leaving San Diego, Cole began to move around once more. Cole and Marie Cushman first crossed paths at a Las Vegas bar in 1979. The two had relations at a motel that same evening, after which he strangled her to death. In November 1980, he returned to Dallas and strangled 3 more women to death. Cole was discovered at the location of the 3rd murder and was a suspect in the 2nd. He was arrested and taken into custody. Cole was on the verge of being ruled out as a suspect when he confessed to all of the other deaths in addition to this one. Cole stated that he had killed at least 14 women in the 9 years prior, but he noted that he might have killed more and was unable to recall precisely because he was typically intoxicated when he performed his crimes. Cole was extradited to Nevada in February 1984, where he was found guilty of strangling 2 women in 1977 and 1979. He received a death sentence in Nevada in October 1984. He allegedly became a Catholic sometime before he was put to death. Kathleen Blum, Mary Cushman, Sally Thompson, Dorothy King, and Wanda Roberts were the victims Cole was found guilty of killing. The latter 3 were killed in Texas. Cole rejected attempts to get his sentence commuted on the day of his execution by anti-death penalty activists such as the American Civil Liberties Union, the United Methodist Church of Reno, and other death row convicts. Cole's final meal consisted of Boston clam chowder, French fries, salad with French dressing, and jumbo fried shrimp. He asked for Kentucky Fried Chicken the previous evening, but guards were only able to provide him with chicken nuggets because he was not permitted to eat anything that contained bones. On December 6, 1985, at 2:10 a.m., Cole was put to death by lethal injection at Nevada State Prison. Hours after his execution, the University of Nevada Reno Medical School retrieved his brain and examined it for anomalies. William Paul Thompson, June 19, 1989. He was found guilty of 3 killings in California and Nevada between March and April 1984, and he subsequently admitted to 3 more murders in 3 other states, all of which have not been proven. He retracted his appeals after being found guilty of a murder in Nevada and was put to death in 1989. Born in Wichita Falls, Texas on May 2, 1938, William Paul Thompson and his family relocated to New York when he was a little boy. At the age of 12, he began drinking and stealing because of his father, a violent alcoholic who abused his family during his drinking binges. As a result, he was transferred to a reform school. For a variety of offenses during his life, including burglary, forgery, safecracking, and counterfeiting, Thompson was recurrently imprisoned in state and federal facilities. He stated that he had criminal records in Georgia, Kansas, Texas, Florida, New York, and Pennsylvania. When he was not incarcerated, Thompson worked at a variety of odd jobs around the area, including boxing and Salvation Army work. In the 1970s, Thompson was married, but his marriage didn't last long because his wife died of cancer in 1982. He became increasingly violent following this, and he claimed to have killed his first people soon after, though this was never proven. About 4 miles northeast of Auburn, California, on March 25, 1984, Thompson was drinking at the murderer's bar with another transient, Robert Herman Boyle, 44. They met brothers John and Robert Perisset, ages 28 and 35, who were in the area for gold panning and fishing. Unbeknownst to the brothers, Thompson told Boyle that he was growing irritated with the two men because of their loud motorcycles and Robert's intoxication. They continued to have drinks with them. The four men proceeded to Thompson and Boyle's campground later that night to smoke Mary Jane and drink tequila. Then, leaving Robert and Thompson alone, Boyle and John Perisset walked to the camper van to collect some sleeping bags. They thought Robert had fallen asleep when they returned and discovered him laying on the ground. Boyle heard a gunshot when he went out again to get more blankets. When he returned to the tent, he found Thompson searching through both brothers' pockets after shooting John in the head with a revolver. The two traveled to Winnemucca, Nevada, when they split ways after agreeing not to turn each other over to the authorities. By then, a 15-year-old local had reported to the police that he had witnessed the two guys depart the crime site, and an arrest warrant had been issued for them. As Thompson proceeded toward Reno, executing many robberies, Boyle made his way to Salt Lake City, Utah. On April 21, he was at the camp of 28-year-old transient jobless Randy Waldron, waiting to board a train close to the Sands Hotel. Thompson grabbed his pistol and shot Waldron 4 times in the head after deciding he needed money and a fake ID. Then he searched in his pockets and ran away. He tried to rob Susan Black and Barbara Johnson at gunpoint 30 minutes later in the same location. He was shocked when the two retaliated, with Black hitting him with her handbag and Johnson hurling a tire iron at him, forcing him to run. Authorities quickly arrested Thompson for the attempted robbery after identifying the unique tattoos on his knuckles. Because Thompson's gun rounds matched those at the crime scene and they discovered some of Waldron's personal belongings on him, they were able to conclusively identify Thompson as Waldron's killer a few days after his capture. Boyle, who had been captured earlier in the week in Salt Lake City, had already been transported to the Placer County Jail, and as Thompson was still in Nevada's jurisdiction, it was agreed that Thompson would be tried for Waldron's murder first. Thompson was charged on April 25 with attempted robbery, murder, assault with a deadly weapon, and carrying a hidden weapon. Boyle accepted a deal with the prosecution to testify against Thompson in exchange for immunity. On September 27, Thompson was sentenced to death. After declaring his desire to pass away with honor, Thompson renounced all state and federal appeals in the ensuing years. He became religious and pursued a formal legal education during the rest of his time on death row. Thompson was put to death by lethal injection in the Nevada State Prison on June 19, 1989. Guards said that his final words before going into the chamber were, "Thank you for letting me die with dignity." He spent the final hours of his life speaking to the prison priest and another death row inmate. He had a last meal of fast food hamburgers, French fries, and a Coke. Sean Patrick Flanagan, June 23, 1989. Flanagan was stopped by the City of Orange, California police on October 13, 1987 for jaywalking. He later willingly confessed to killing 2 people in Las Vegas. Flanagan claims that in late September 1987, he met James Lewandowski in Las Vegas. Later, Lewandowski made sexual advances on Flanagan, which infuriated him. Flanagan met Lewandowski at Foxy's Casino in Las Vegas on October 5, 1987, and he made plans to murder him. The man was enticed back to Flanagan's motel room. The two were sitting on Flanagan's bed on October 6, 1987, when Flanagan abruptly rushed for Lewandowski, placed him in a headlock, and strangled him between 4 and 6 a.m. After a few minutes, Flanagan let go of Lewandowski and discovered that, although being unconscious, he was still breathing and his heart was beating. Flanagan rolled Lewandowski's body from the bed onto the floor, pushed a mattress on top of the body, and punched him in the throat with his fist. Later that day, Flanagan went to get a knife and trash bags and hired his motel room for another day. Over the course of the evening of October 6 and the early hours of October 7, Flanagan methodically dismembered Lewandowski. Flanagan sliced his torso in half and severed his head, limbs, and legs. After putting the different parts in trash bags, Flanagan left them in dumpsters outside an apartment building close to his motel. Flanagan told the police that he was walking on Sahara Avenue in Las Vegas around 9 p.m. on October 10, 1987, when Albert Duggins offered him a ride. He accepted Duggins' invitation to the Sahara Hotel for cocktails. Flanagan agreed, and he claimed that within 15 to 20 minutes he had plans to murder Duggins because he thought the man was gay. The two spent a few hours at the pool area of Duggins' apartment complex after leaving the hotel after 2 or 3 hours. On October 11, 1987, at around 3 or 4 in the morning, Flanagan asked Duggins to drive him back to Sahara Avenue. They got into Duggins' vehicle. Upon preparing to start the car, Duggins was informed by Flanagan that he was going to die because he, Duggins, was a fat. After that, Flanagan took Duggins by the neck and choked him. In the process of choking him, Flanagan persisted in speaking to him, telling him that his whole kind should be exterminated and that he did not deserve to live. Flanagan stole Duggins' wallet and clothing, drove his car to a distant location, and disposed of the body. Flanagan freely said that he enjoyed murdering, that he had no regrets, and that he might kill again. Before being taken to the execution room at Nevada State Prison, where he was given a lethal injection, 28-year-old Flanagan, a former Marine, sang church hymns and read the Bible. Deputy District Attorney Dan Seaton, who had charged Flanagan with the murders of 2 gay men in Las Vegas, was among the first row of witnesses. Even though Flanagan was strapped to a table, he raised his head and mouthed to Seaton, "You are just a man. I love you." Those were his final words. He refused the last meal and instead sipped soft drinks throughout the night. Thomas Baal, June 3, 1990, for the robbery and murder of Frances Maves, 34, in February 1988 in Las Vegas, where she was stabbed 8 times, he received a death sentence. He claimed that happened because he was on drugs. Baal was 26 years old at the time of his execution. His parents struggled to stop the execution, saying the reason why he didn't want to appeal the sentence was because he suffered from long-term mental problems and brain damage. Baal talked to friends on the phone and prayed throughout his last night. 25 minutes before the injection began, Baal was put on the table. He murmured inaudible phrases and peered at the 24 witnesses via viewing windows. "I love you all," was Ball's statement as he turned to face the spectators while being strapped to a table in the glass-enclosed death chamber. His last meal consisted of a combination of pizza with anchovies, apple pie, chocolate ice cream, jelly donuts, and several soft drinks. Richard Allen Moran, March 30, 1996. Richard Allen Moran robbed the cash register of the Red Pearl Saloon in Las Vegas, Nevada on August 2, 1984, after shooting the bartender and the patron. 9 days later, he shot himself and his ex-wife. He also made an unsuccessful attempt to cut his wrists. Moran admitted to the murders on August 13 when he called the police to his hospital bedside. He entered a not guilty plea despite being charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. Even if they noticed that he was depressed, 2 court-ordered psychiatrists came to the conclusion that he was competent to stand trial. In 1978, Moran, who had been a roofer in New York, traveled to Las Vegas with a friend in search of employment. He worked as a bartender at the Bingo Palace for 5.5 years. He became increasingly addicted to narcotics, particularly cocaine, during those years, and would often go 2 or 3 days without sleep. Due to a personality shift brought on by his drug use, he lost his job. He bought cocaine with all of his money. The death penalty was the prosecution's goal. Moran told the court he wanted to drop his lawyers and enter a guilty plea 2 months after the psychiatric evaluations. He also gave up his right to legal representation. He received a death sentence during his trial. On the basis that he was mentally incapable of representing himself, Moran then requested state post-conviction relief. After an evidence hearing, the trial court dismissed his claim. Moran had been spending his final days making telephone calls and reading. At Nevada State Prison, Richard Allen Moran, 42, was declared dead at 12:10 a.m., 3 minutes after the drug started to flow through his veins. His last meal was lasagna, chicken parmesan, salad, and ice cream. In a final interview before his execution, he said the following: "You can't even begin to imagine what it feels like to know you've killed somebody. Innocent people, not self-defense, not some scumbag who was beating his wife and you were coming to her rescue or something. It's like you turned in your membership card to the human race." Roderick Abeyta, October 5, 1998. He was on death row because he broke into his ex-girlfriend's house in search of drugs and shot her twice in the head while she slept. Abeyta was incarcerated in California and Nevada for the majority of his adult life. He was raised close to San Francisco and claimed that his father mistreated him, causing him to end up in foster homes before entering California Youth Authority camps. He started taking methamphetamine when he was just 14 years old, and he was arrested driving a stolen vehicle when he was 17. For a large portion of his life, Abeyta had been in and out of jail. When he made amends with his wife, Barbara, in 1989, he was living with Martin, who was 38. However, he and his half-brother, Casey Corsmo, went on a drinking binge following a fight with Barbara. They busted a window to enter the Martin residence because they wanted drugs. It appears that Martin's drug use caused him to pass out. Abeyta sat on her back, pulled her hair, and shot her twice in the head when the two failed to locate any drugs. Corsmo pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for his involvement in the case and is currently serving a life sentence with the chance of parole. About Abeyta, State Prison Director Bob Baer said his final remarks were expressions of true remorse and that he hoped his passing would help in the healing process for the family. As witnesses, 3 members of Donna Martin's immediate family were positioned in the front row, about 18 inches from the death chamber. They observed as Abeyta, 46, received an injection of 3 lethal medications while strapped to a table. At 12:13 a.m., the chemicals began to pour into his left arm, and at 12:15 a.m., he was declared dead. A large portion of Abeyta's last day was spent on the phone, including a call to a television station in Reno. He received visits from Reverend Jim Kelly, chaplain of the jail in Ely, which houses death row convicts, and Chaplain Al Fry of the penitentiary in Carson City. He consumed the standard jail fare, which included iced tea, a potato, stewed tomatoes, tossed salad, and Salisbury steak. Vanilla ice cream was the only specific request he had. To ensure that he won't struggle, the prisoner is typically sedated an hour prior to the execution. However, Abeyta asked that no medication be provided to him beforehand. He was escorted by 5 officers into the prison's second-floor cream-colored death chamber. He was dressed in white Nike basketball shoes, jeans, and a light-collared shirt. He had 4 straps covering the rest of his body, and his wrists and legs were secured to the table. Without glancing at any of the spectators huddled around the rail outside the chamber, Abeyta fixed his gaze on the ceiling. Once he was secured, the shades were drawn on the 3 windows in the chamber. Most of the people who watched the execution waited in silence. Abeyta kept staring at the ceiling. He inhaled deeply twice and closed his eyes. 2 minutes after the medicine began to enter his veins, he passed away. Alvaro Calambro, April 5, 1999. Calambro, a Vietnamese immigrant, admitted to killing 2 individuals at a Reno U-Haul company and was given the death penalty. On the evening of January 3, 1994, he and his brother-in-law, Duck Kong Huen, showed up at the store and hogtied Keith Christopher, 21, and Peggy Crawford, 37. Peggy and Keith were bound and fatally beaten with a hammer and crowbar. The 2 men stole $2,400. Both men were sentenced to death. A week after the arrests, Doc and Calambro's sister Maria made a suicide pact. On January 25, 1994, Maria gave their 4-year-old son, Ben, 20 sleeping pills, slit his right wrist and suffocated him, then took the blade to her own wrist and swallowed 40 sleeping pills. The woman recovered and is serving a life sentence for her son's murder in the Southern Nevada Women's Correctional Facility in North Las Vegas. Doc unsuccessfully tried to slit his wrists while in custody in Los Angeles the same day his son died and eventually hanged himself on December 26, 1995 with a bed sheet. Before his execution, Calambro enjoyed the same lunch as the other 872 prisoners, and his final meal was steak, rice, corn, apple pie, and Sprite at 6 p.m. The menu is restricted to foods that are available in the jail kitchen, even though he was given the option to choose. Calambro was watched by guards all day. According to reports, he spoke with one of his sisters, watched TV, and received communion. New prison-issued jeans and white laceless tennis shoes were also handed to Calambro, who wore them as he made the 20-step journey from his cell to the pale yellow, airtight execution room. There, 4 guards secured him on the gurney using cuffs to keep his wrists and ankles in place and 7 seat belts. A few minutes after 9 p.m., the 25-year-old man was strapped to a stretcher inside the Nevada State Prison's antiquated gas chamber. He neither flinched or fought as a deadly injection started to flow through his veins. Calambro's fleeting glances never met the gazes of the family members of the 2 individuals whose skulls he bludgeoned in 1994, who watched closely through the glass windows of the circular chamber, holding hands. Rather, the man turned his head towards the wall over his left shoulder and seemed to fall asleep. His last words were, "I regret it." Sebastian Bridges, April 21, 2001. He was serving time in California when he met his wife, Lori, a prison nurse. He caught up with her after she fled the marriage to Las Vegas. In order to restore her property, she invited Lori and her new boyfriend to meet with him. The boyfriend, Hunter Blatchford, 27, was shot and buried in the desert during said meeting. Before being put to death via lethal injection at the Nevada State Prison, Sebastian Bridges said, "I killed nobody, I didn't kill anybody." This was a final heated outburst. At 8:50 p.m., Bridges was taken to the execution chamber and strapped to a table where some of his remarks could be heard via blinds that prevented spectators from seeing him. A combination of 3 medications, 2 of which were fatal, were injected into the 37-year-old South African's body through a needle in his arm, and he was declared dead at 9:18 p.m. He was escorted into the execution chamber wearing a suit and tie instead of the usual new prison blue jeans and denim shirt. Bridges' last words were, "You have no justification to kill me. It's just wrong. It's just wrong." Lawrence Colwell Jr., March 26, 2004. On March 10, 1994, 76-year-old Frank Rosenstock, a retired New York furrier residing at the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas, was robbed and killed by Lawrence Colwell and his girlfriend, Mary Lee Paul. Under the guise of having relations with the victim, Paul accompanied him to his room. Then she opened the door for Colwell. He robbed the victim after handcuffing and strangling him with a belt. Paul turned herself in to authorities in Oregon after traveling there with Colwell. She ultimately testified against Colwell and entered a guilty plea to first-degree murder. She was given a life sentence with the possibility of parole. In his plea, Colwell admitted to first-degree murder, burglary, and robbery of a victim who was 65 years of age or older. He made no mitigators and essentially requested that he be executed during his sentencing hearing. He had been planning to kill someone for weeks, Colwell said to the sentencing panel, and he killed Rosenstock for the kicks of it, I guess. Those were his words. But he stated that the murder was like taking a walk in the park, taking a drive down the street. He expressed regret for his actions. Colwell gave up all federal appeal rights and volunteered for execution when state appeals were unsuccessful. His final meal consisted of a grilled cheeseburger with onions, pickles, and tomatoes, French fries, 3 slices of cheese and pepperoni pizza, 3 pints of vanilla, chocolate, and chocolate chip ice cream, water, a 20-ounce Coke, a 20-ounce Pepsi, and fruit, including an apple, banana, and orange. That was a lot. He had no final words. Terry Jess Dennis, August 12, 2004. When 52-year-old Air Force veteran Terry Dennis met 51-year-old Russian immigrant Ilona Strumanis in a Reno motel in March 1999, she enabled him to become drunk for several days. In his later comments to the police, Dennis claimed that 3 weeks prior he had thoughts about killing a woman. Then, during their drinking spree, Strumanis had ridiculed Dennis for his lack of sexual performance and asked if he had been able to kill anyone while serving in the Air Force in Vietnam. While they were having relations, Dennis wrapped a belt around her neck and began to tighten it, choking her. Before calling the police and reporting that he had a dead body in his room, he drank vodka for a few more days. Citing his prior criminal convictions, a 3-judge panel decided that Dennis should be executed after he entered a guilty plea to first-degree murder. In 1966, he attempted suicide for the first time, the first of what would be up to a dozen. Before relocating to Reno in 1995, he served roughly 2.5 years in jail after being found guilty of assault in 1979 in Washington and arson and assault in 1984. Dennis offered to be put to death and waived appeals. His final meal consisted of 2 cheeseburgers and a Coke with ice. He had no final words. Daryl Linn Mack, April 26, 2006. Mack was given the death penalty for the essay and killing of Betty Jane May in Reno in October of 1988. It took 12 years for the murder to be solved before DNA evidence connected him to the crime. At the time, he was already incarcerated after being found guilty of Kim Parks's murder in April 1994 and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. He was given a death sentence, demanded to be executed, and waived his appeals. The body of 55-year-old Betty Jane May was discovered in her basement room at a Reno, Nevada boarding home on October 28, 1988. Stephen Floyd, her neighbor, discovered the body. Early the following morning, an autopsy was performed. Experts in medicine determined that she had been essayed before being strangled to death. It would be 12 years before the murder was solved. A maid discovered the body of 35-year-old Kim Parks in a Reno motel room on April 8, 1994. Her own bra had been used to choke her to death. Parks was a frequent visitor to the motel and a prostitute, according to the police. Late on April 6, she had checked into the motel. She was slain on April 7, according to the autopsy. There was blood found at the crime scene that was not hers. Police were notified by a motel employee that they had spotted Parks and Mack there together. They obtained a sample of Mack's blood through a seizure order, and it matched the blood found at the scene of the crime. Mack was taken into custody and accused of murder. He claimed he did not murder Parks. He said he had an argument with her because she had allegedly stolen money from him. Although he initially denied ever being at the motel, the bedsheet's DNA evidence matched his. He was convicted of Parks' murder in October 1994 and given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Another detective re-examined the unsolved murder of Betty Jane May while Mack was incarcerated and asked for DNA testing of some of the material. Bloodstains discovered on May's blouse and genetic material extracted from her body matched Mack's DNA profile. Mack was formally charged with first-degree murder in 2000. The state of Nevada requested the death punishment this time. Mack asked for a judge trial rather than a jury trial. On May 15, 2002, a 3-judge panel found Mack guilty and condemned him to death. He persisted in his denial of killing May. Mack willingly handed up all of his appeals shortly after receiving his death sentence. While awaiting execution, he declined to speak to the media and had stated in court that he would prefer to be put to death than to live out the rest of his days behind bars. On March 5, 2004, his execution was supposed to take place, but it was postponed until the court decided his legal appeals. The Supreme Court of Nevada halted it before it could be carried out on December 1, 2005. Mack's execution was rescheduled for April 26, 2006, after the stay was lifted in February of that year. Mack was put to death by lethal injection at Nevada State Prison on April 26, 2006. He became an Islamist in prison and read the Quran in his last hours. He had a fish fillet sandwich, French fries, and a soft drink for his last meal. At 9:06 p.m., he was declared dead, and his last words were, "Allah is great, Allah is great." After more than 17 years without an execution, Mack is still the most recent individual to be put to death by the state of Nevada as of 2024. In 2018, Nevada almost put convicted murderer Scott Dozier to death, but it was stopped. Later, in January 2019, Dozier committed suicide by hanging. Zane Floyd, the convicted mass murderer, was set to be put to death in Nevada on July 26, 2021. A federal judge, however, halted the execution. Floyd would have been the first person executed in Nevada in more than 15 years if he had been put to death. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.